Hey everybody, in this interview I speak with Chell, who's the president and CEO of Cold War Technology. We discussed how he's building a software, hardware, and service company for the oil and gas sector right out of Canada. The differences he sees between the Canadian and American entrepreneurship ecosystems, why he considers himself unemployable and also considers it even riskier to not have a real job and to be an entrepreneur. And also be sure to check out his street art. It's right behind him in the interview. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Chell, CEO of Cold War Technology.
Well, hi, Brett. Thanks so much for taking the time. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. I'd like to start off soft just by having you introduce yourself and Cold War Technology. So, what does the company do, and why and how did you decide to start it?
I think I decided to start it because I'm probably and for sure 100% unemployable. So the only way I'm going to have a job is if I create one for myself. But no, I think so. Cold War is a software, hardware. It's kind of a mashup, actually, software, hardware, and service company in oil and gas. And we provide software development services and control and automation systems primarily for fracking for all the biggest oil companies in the world. And a lot of the biggest service companies as well now.
Now, you mentioned that you started your own business for for reasons of unemployability, and I know that you've launched more than one high growth company. You've been in the energy space, in the blockchain space, and others. So, I want to know from you how you describe Canada's entrepreneurship ecosystem and what you see or have seen as its strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, and it's an interesting one because my business is primarily in the U.S. now, right? 90% of my operations are down there. As you probably know, if you're talking to a lot of entrepreneurs all the time, and maybe yourself even, while you're building these businesses and raising money, most people end up in the States at some point raising that capital because there's way more money down there. The markets are usually bigger unless there's some niche up here. And people are just more apt to investing in early stage companies down there, much more conservative up here in Canada. So I have this perspective of the Canadian entrepreneurial ecosystem versus the US one. Just in general, Canada's a little hamstrung just by its size of market and access to capital. I think a lot of projects up here versus the US get started by really smart people and never get off the ground because it is quite a bit harder to find capital and figure out who and what. And just it's not the culture up here in Canada, right? Like Canadian culture for business is kind of like start small, take forever, get traditional debt vehicles like bank, a line of credit or something, and just take your 5 years to grow it. Where the US, they find a tech company or an idea or something like that. They raise 10 million, 20 million, 40 million and hire 50 people and crash and burn or explode real quick.
You're touching on my next question is if we had to look at what you think are those key priority areas that Canada has to tackle to improve that entrepreneurship ecosystem and to really support those Canadian founders and startups to succeed. Now, you mentioned that capital is one of them, lack of, or maybe not the right type of capital available. Are there any others that come to the fore in terms of what we should be doing to bring our companies to the next level?
We have some good incentive programs like with tax rebates and stuff like that and shred and grants and stuff like that entrepreneurs can access here in Canada. Granted, I haven't done a lot other than shred and the tax ones. I didn't go the grant route. Our project doesn't lend itself to that. I know that they are out there. I think probably the biggest improvement we can make here in Canada that would have the most impact like today, that's not, ideological, like, oh, let's change the culture of Canadians so that they all want to support entrepreneurs. Okay, you could start a campaign to try to raise awareness, but something that might actually make an impact in the near term would be more cross-border on-ramping programs or assistance programs in developing into that market. And so you could, as a Canadian government or Canadian people or economy, you want to try and keep those businesses here and those tax dollars rolling in and employing Canadians. But you need to give people ramps to the US market so that they can have kind of a dual business where the Canadian half is running the US half and the US half is operations and this is management. So if we could maybe educate people that is possible and support them in that, then what we're doing is building a bridge to 300 million people instead of 30 million. And then they can still grow their business here, and we can still get a lot of, don't have the brain drain, and we can keep those tax dollars, and we can start growing out, the talent here. I just don't think there's a lot of that. I don't see a lot of it. Like, how do we help people get to the US? They're scared that once they do that, they're going to run away and take the business with them.
I know that you come from a family of entrepreneurs. And so I want to ask you about the entrepreneur's DNA and what it means to you. And also, like, what qualities, either inherent or taught or developed, describe a successful entrepreneur for you?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's funny because you did a little bit of research. That's good. So, yeah, my whole family on both sides never had a job. I don't know what it is. I think it's like it's definitely some DNA for sure. But I think if you just grow up in that environment, you just get used to that life, and I think that's what makes you unemployable. If you're like, you're just like, everyone has their own time all the time, they're all under a lot of pressure. So you grow up around that, right? Everyone's under pressure. We've all seen ups and downs. Our family has had some great successes, and a couple of my family members and uncles that are married actually, my mom married, both my mom's sisters married very successful guys, in the hundreds of millions. So you get exposed to this crazy level of success. But then in our direct family, we've had complete failures where you lost everything, like to zero, toasted, and you got to start over. And that happened like multiple times while I was growing up. I saw my one uncle, I saw my dad, I saw, and they would just kind of go do it again. And so I think by the time, you turn 18 or 20, you're just like, you don't have that aversion, I think, that a lot of people have. They go, oh, I don't know how you risk it all the time. I'm like, what do you mean risking? And you genuinely, I hear that this kind of cliche, but it really is in my head. The bigger risk for me would be working at a job for my whole life. Like, and then just getting to the end of my life and being like, why did I do that? What did I ever, what was the purpose of that I make? What did I create?
You got the gold watch after 35 years.
Yeah. Life is about creation, I think, to people like us, right? Like whether it's tangible or intangible, what I make, like what I had to make a difference, or I had to make a product, or I had to make a change, or whatever it is you want to make. But I think we're all really creative type people that aren't, and most of the people in my family, to be honest, are not analytically strong. Like, we're not highly detail orientated. We're very, I don't want to use the word visionary because it sounds like you're blowing your own horn, but we tend to like to look at bigger problems and try to solve bigger problems, figure out how we're going to solve them, bring it down, and then divide tasks up and build teams around how to solve them. And that feels like we're creating something. Right. And so that's where most of my family were in tech. And I think that it just kind of, the tech problems tend to be, you can make a tech problem as big as you want. I guess that's what attracts us to it.
What advice would you give to an entrepreneur who's looking to start or grow a company in Canada within the energy industry?
The IoT devices that are being put out there are growing exponentially, and automation is taking over for a lot of what used to be done manually. So when you combine IoT, automation, and a lot of data, and I don't want to use big data because it's cliche. We're talking about mega data. That ecosystem is just coming into its own in energy. And so if I was starting a business now, I would focus on areas that kind of are on the periphery of that, like products that would help manage or deliver services that would deliver a service or a product from that data. Right? So you start thinking about like, okay, all these big companies that are traditional brick and mortar companies are implementing platforms, IoT, and large data consumption. They're just getting a grip on that right now, and that's all getting put in place. So in 3 to 5 years, the companies that are going to be the biggest and have the most opportunity in raising money in the next 1 to 2 are hypothetically going to be the companies that are providing services or products back to them, taking their own data and turning it back to them in business practices or understanding and how to make their company exponentially more profitable or more efficient or any of that. I'm already looking at this space too, so this is why it's a bit selfish, but keeping up on blockchain and stuff like DAG, DAG Constellation Network being developed as a company in the States. They're the next blockchain 2.0 that is not a linear developed blockchain. It's a direct acyclic graph chain. If you know what that is, and you're looking at moving from smart contracts to a DAG, then I would say you would be in a good spot to raise some money, some interest, get some decks together.
And if that's you, get in touch with Brett right away.
Yes, if you got a lot of experience with DAG already, you get in touch with me. I got a job for you.